I mentioned yesterday morning I talked about people who waved flags saying that bad things might happen. I think your worst nightmare right now is I start up a presentation with about 50 densely filled slides summarizing what we've been talking about for the last 2 days, but I'm not going to do that. Just I guess it's my privilege as sponsor to make a couple of remarks. My first one, of course, is this has been a really interesting 2 days. I've been a little bit out of my depth on occasions, and but been fascinated by the discussions. But I do want to thank all the people who made this possible. First of all, the ALIAS Consortium with Giovanni, Giuseppe, Marta, I guess, was helping, Paola and Patrizia. So I know they've been working very hard and fretting a lot and sweating a lot over this, and it's worked out pretty well in the end, I think. Also Amalia, who's helped put together the agenda, find speakers, and has been in contact with the consortium to help. And also, of course, Rosanna, I guess you'll say a big thank you to her on our behalf. So it's been, and your hospitality, the meal, and everything's been excellent. So maybe a thank you to these people. All I wanted to say was, you know, at the beginning I said this is not just discussion as an end in itself, but it has to kind of produce something that's a little bit ongoing and lasting. So the challenges, I guess, for ALIAS now are, number one, generating and maintaining a certain momentum in the discussion. You've been told about the ALIAS network, the website, all the possibilities you have to interact with that. So you're of course invited, and we hope you'll all get involved in that. And we lay down the challenge to Paola and the others, the rest of the team, to actually keep something moving along and keep the interest up. So that's the first challenge. The second is, of course, the next phase of the project, or one of the big things they have to do now is establish this legal case based on these kinds of discussions. A few difficulties they have is, first of all, I think, deciding who's the target user of this legal case. They're all, I have 3 points that are all interrelated. Who's going to use the legal case? Who's it actually aimed at? And secondly, related to that, deciding on the scale and the granularity of the case, of the argumentation, of the process, and so on. We've been talking about individual tools. I think that's been the focus, you know, rather small elements of the system. But the third thing I wanted to say is we've heard also that the system is very integrated, quite homogeneous. Things happening somewhere have an impact elsewhere in the system, and so on and so forth. So those three things, who's the user, what kind of scale and granularity, and how do you take into account the integration of the system, I think are three things that the legal case will have to consider quite carefully as it progresses. On that last point, the integration of the system, the HALA automation networks was mentioned on the first day and described a little bit. I would mention also the complex world network, because much of your early descriptive in your first document, the setting the scene study, actually talks about complex socio-technical systems, and those kinds of issues are addressed by the complex world network. And so I think as well as looking at HALA and connecting with that, you should also be talking to the complex world people. Carlos was here, and I know he spoke with some of you. And that was all I wanted to say, except before handing over to Giovanni, wish you a good trip back, and don't get too hot. Thank you.
So also, I will just say a few words. I would like to thank everybody for being here. It's been a real pleasure for me. I hope that this occasion gave us the opportunity of starting a conversation that is going to continue, in particular over the network. And it's a conversation, in particular between lawyers and engineers and people working in ITM, and we need the contribution of all in order to find a good solution to the problems we are addressing. It was interesting for me also some stereotypes which I had in mind were defeated during these days. For instance, I imagined that lawyers were very talkative, while on the other hand, engineers were not. Well, this was not what happened in these days. Engineers have been very, very talkative, and I assumed that, I read that an engineer knows only 200 words on non-technical language they can use, which was not the case, and it was a pleasure to engage in various conversations here. Laws and regulation are important in aviation. I think we all agree on that, and regulation and liability are an important aspect. We cannot avoid them, and they can provide a useful response. But liability is a rough instrument. There are no substitute for safety rules, standards, certification, for all those kinds of other regulatory techniques that are there. And liabilities may also be an obstacle to the deployment of innovation and to the development also of a just culture. We need to find a way of addressing in the best way the issue of legal liability, and also providing good inputs not only to those who are dealing with liabilities inside the aviation system, but also, I think, to our legal and judiciary systems. So I think this is a bit the kind of task that our project should be able to address, and we need the contribution of all of you. There are some difficulties. In particular, we have also to deal with the differences of laws. I don't know if you ever heard the story according to which if you go to in Britain, whatever is not forbidden is permitted. If you go instead in Germany, they have a stricter perspective, and there whatever is not permitted is forbidden. And if you have to China, it's even worse, because there whatever is permitted is forbidden. But you are so lucky to be in Italy now, where whatever is forbidden is permitted. But I hope this not holds also with regard to the aviation domain, since not complying with the rule may have very serious effect, as we have seen in some of the cases we have been considering. But at this point, I think I've spoken enough, and I would like to thank again all of you for being here, and again I would like to thank especially Rosanna, but also Amalia, who has given a great contribution to this event, providing us with invaluable suggestions and advice. I think I would like to give a special thank to the people involved in the ALIAS project, but I think especially to Giuseppe, who's been the one who's been working most for preparing this event. So thank you very much to everybody.